Welcome to the Artists and Emotions podcast. Before we get started, everybody, I just want you to know that the podcast is no longer just on Spotify. We are up on Apple Podcasts. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're enjoying it, please do me a favor and go there, give us a 5-star rating, and give us a review. Tell us what we can do better. But now, on to the episode. So I'm very excited about this episode because the person I have with me today, in real time, in all honesty, I haven't known for that long, but her personality, her work ethic, and basically how she treats everybody around her, I appreciate wholeheartedly. This is Sarah Massey. And Sarah, her accolades and her talent can speak for herself. She is an actress, she is a director of photography, she is an editor, she is a writer. I don't know, is there anything else I'm missing?
First off, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate this. But yeah, man, I get asked a lot, like, what side of the camera do you like to be on the most? Like, what is your favorite role? And I know, like, people always advise, like, you gotta find your niche. You gotta find that one thing that, you want to focus on. But I genuinely love so many aspects of filmmaking. I love being in front of the camera, and I love just as much and maybe a little bit more being behind the camera. Yeah.
I mean, that's fair. And for anybody who's listening, I'll get more into this after we sort of break down you a little bit. But I've actually had the chance to see you work both sides of the camera.
That's right.
And I've had a chance to work with you both of those times, which was great. But I want to start out here with, what is your story, Sarah? Like, how did you find your love of acting in film or theater, and how did you get to where you are today?
It's been a very long journey for me. I discovered in my childhood that I loved cameras. It all started when my parents gave me my very own little pocket Canon PowerShot. I think it was A1000 for my birthday. It's like one of those cute little like 2000s silver cameras. And I was so excited when I found out that this camera had a video record button. I was like, oh my gosh, a whole new world has opened to me. So I was 11 years old and I was running around the house. I was making up little TV shows and TED Talks. I was filming myself playing different characters. Oh my gosh, I was never without that camera. I carried it around everywhere. But I didn't have any idea, concept at the time of pursuing a career in film. For me, it was just a fun hobby. I loved photography. My mom's a photographer, so I spent a lot of time running around taking pictures. We traveled a lot, and I loved recording everything with my camera. My dad liked to make home videos, and so he would play around on editing software. He had Sony Vegas editing software. So when I was 12, I wanted to get into editing, just some fun little home videos of my own. And so my dad sat me down and gave me my first lesson in editing. I was a really big fan of history documentaries at the time, travel documentaries, history documentaries, and I loved to travel all up and down the East Coast to various like American Revolution, like historical sites, that kind of thing. So I decided that I wanted, at the age of 12, to film my own little history documentary. So I wrote the script myself. My mom and I were going to the Virginia Historic Triangle, which is Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. So I wrote my own little script, and 12 years old, and I was kind of the star of it. So my mom would help film me, and I would memorize my little script, and I'd be like, the building behind me, and I would give my little historical fun facts. And so yeah, that was my summer project. I came home and I edited like a little 6-minute docu-short. And that's where it all began. So yeah, by the time I was 14, I definitely knew I wanted to get into acting. So I lived in Aiken, South Carolina at the time, and they have a lovely little tiny volunteer community theater called the Aiken Community Theater. And they had a youth wing program, which was very cool. It was very educational. They had a lot of classes. They would teach you things like stage fighting, dialects, dance. It was so much fun. And I got so caught up in that world. I just loved every aspect of theater. By the time I was 18 and graduated high school, I had gotten into video production in my community. I wanted to honor the impact that the Theater Youth Wing program had on me and a lot of my friends. So I ended up deciding to make a docu-short about the impact it was having on the community. I called it Stage Door to the World. And it's about 20 minutes long. And I interviewed, maybe 20 plus people. It took me about a year to complete. I actually filmed behind the scenes and actual performances of multiple different shows, followed people along their journey, and it was so much fun. I definitely, from an early age, felt drawn to the documentary format, even though I do love storytelling, narrative filmmaking. I do have a special place in my heart for documentary filmmaking. So yeah, fast forward a couple years, I got a lot of experience in a plethora of different styles, music videos, a lot of social media marketing videos for local businesses. I did some other documentary content. I made a short film with my friends, which was a whole experience. I think that was also when I was 18. I remember somebody's dad taught me how to do storyboards. I didn't know how to do storyboards. It was so cute. I think all of the dialogue for that entire short film was MOS with my camcorder. It was fun. It was a fun experience. I did not know what I was doing, but honestly, I love learning on the job, just jumping in and getting that hands-on experience. But yeah. It was 2022. Obviously, the pandemic had hit and ended my experience, my time with theater. So the local theaters were closed for a good year or two. And I had been doing a lot of soul searching. The 2020 to 2022, I was really asking myself a lot of questions about what I wanted to focus on, where I saw myself going. And I decided to focus more on video editing. I have a weird love for video editing. If anybody has ever tried video editing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It is a lot of long hours sitting hunched over a computer while you watch and rewatch and watch again the same video clips over and over ad nauseum. Trying every little combination to make the video edit look good. There's color grading, sound mixing, and you gotta know so many computer programs. I mean, I constantly have people coming out, oh, do you edit on DaVinci? Oh, do you know Premiere Pro? What about Final Cut? Oh, do you do After Effects? Like, the learning curve for editing is so hard. But I don't know. I have a special interest in video editing because I love watching a project come together. I feel being on set is exciting. There's a lot of activity, a lot of chaos, a lot of socialization. It's awesome. It's a thrill ride. But it's truly in the editing suite that a project comes together. And it's a very special position to be in, to be the person that gets to put it together. You're the first person that gets to see the finished product. And I don't know, it's kind of a slow burn thrill, but there's just something about the satisfaction of, just rearranging some clips and being like, oh my gosh, there it is. That's the final cut. Oh, it looks so good. Like, there's something about that that's like really special to me. So in 2022, I decided to start promoting myself as a video editor as opposed to a full service film producer. And man, I was in a place where I really wanted to network. I didn't have a whole lot of connections at the time, and I was not in the place that I wanted to be. And I knew I wanted to take things to the next level, and I wanted to get more into feature filmmaking, and kind of grow towards the Atlanta film industry. But I live in a small city, Augusta, Georgia, where we do have a thriving film community. I'm very proud of the work that people have put into the film industry in Augusta, but it's still smaller. And networking is tricky. And in Augusta, it's all in who you know. You have to build connections. You have to spend a lot of time doing free volunteer work on people's film sets in order to make connections and actually build a business. So I was definitely in a point where I was racking my brain how to get my business and my career to the next level. And something I've learned is the importance of networking and just getting outside of your comfort zone, getting outside of the box. I have always kind of struggled with social anxiety a little bit. For me, it's very nerve-wracking to walk into a room full of strangers that you don't know. And, especially in the film industry, there's a lot of competition. Often you'll walk into a situation where, people are loudly proclaiming their resumes, and it's easy to feel small, so that's definitely been a journey for me to work on my self-confidence and the courage to, promote my work. And I don't want to sound egotistical, but also actually just being able to be hey, here's what I've done. Take a look at it, But yeah, it is nerve-wracking to walk into a room full of people and you don't know anybody. But everything kind of changed for me. It was fall of 2022, and I had been in background for a short film, and it was a volunteer thing. I wasn't paid for it, but it was a really sweet short film that was shot in Warrenton, Georgia, called The Magic Ticket. And so I was background on that, and I was sat at a table with a filmmaker in Augusta, and it was all by chance that the director randomly sat me at this table. But we got to talking, and this filmmaker was telling me about a director up in Colombia who had made a movie called Acorn, and David Axe. And there was a lot going on set. I kind of was half listening to what he was saying, but I was like, oh, this is cool. This is great. Awesome for you. And then I forgot about our conversation, and then 3 days later, he sends me a text. He's like, oh, well, David's actually having a screening for his movie up in Colombia, which was an hour from where I lived. Would you like to go? And at first I was like, oh, it's a Saturday. I'm tired. Do I really want to drive an hour to go see a screening for a movie that I don't even know is good? I don't know. And I don't know anybody there. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. Drove up there, and it was that I did not realize would be a life-changing event for me, because I got to meet David. We instantly clicked. We both have very similar goals and drives in our career. We're both definitely workaholics. And so we worked together on a couple small projects, and he ended up asking me if I would like to help shoot his 2023 feature film, Left One Alive. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have never shot something of that scale. And I was like, I need to get better at my cinematography. So that's where I met you. That's where it came. Our short film, Simon Says. I had connected with a friend of mine, Ryan Avent, who you actually interviewed on your podcast.
I did.
He talks about theater, so we both met at the Aiken Community Theater. So we were 17 years old, little babies who didn't have any idea what we wanted in life.
None whatsoever.
We were just trying to figure things out, but look at us now, man. But yeah, so we had reconnected, and he was like, I'd love to do some stunt choreography. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to film stunts. Like, I want to get into action filmmaking. So I wrote a script. This is December of 2022. And it was all purely, for me, it started with the goal of practicing to get ready for Left One Alive. I wanted to push myself. I love a challenge. And so I ended up writing a short film called Simon Says. And that's when I was looking for an actor, and Cody comes along.
Yeah, in the one thing I can say about you, in terms of a first-time filmmaker, I was very, very impressed with how you handled that set. Because coming from, as I've talked about on this podcast before, originally from the state of Maine, which I feel incredibly fortunate that it was the first project I got to do as soon as I got down here.
That's right.
And coming from a state where the industry is basically non-existent, a lot of times sets they're not great. People are passionate and they mean well, but the environments aren't fantastic, unfortunately. But the way that you ran your set, it was just a ton of fun. That's the best way I can say it. And you kept the cast and crew fed and catered. And that for me is I was very happy.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
Yeah, when you're working with an extremely small budget, so Simon Says was, I think, $1,500 in total. And there was a couple of us who were pitching in, which I appreciate the help, because it was kind of a last minute idea of mine, and we ended up having a long rehearsal process for the stunts, but I hadn't had a big chance to, save up. But I mean, that's the thing people don't understand is like when you film a short film, and you know this, Cody, the money quickly adds up. Filmmaking is expensive. But yeah, that's one of my main thoughts is that when you have people on your set and they're volunteering, even if you can't pay them, you got to at least give them something. And first and foremost, you got to feed them. You have to respect their time. Especially if they're working for free, like we're not talking about rates and overtime and all that good stuff. Like if they're working for free, you got to be really careful that you're not exploiting people.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's at least my very strong feelings on that matter. I know David Axe has that same philosophy, so it's been really good working with him because he's like, I gotta pay everybody something. Like even if it's like $20-$50, like I gotta compensate you. I've got to respect your skills, your time, the fact that you are a professional coming on the set. So I try to do the most that I can do, and sometimes that just means feeding everybody incredibly well, but that is the absolute least I can do. But oh my gosh, the amount of support. We had a pretty decent sized crew. We had Terrence Williams from Indie Grip Studio brought his grip truck and lit the entire project. I also had Chris Martino on 2 days was our gaffer, and he brought his own lights. We had Joshua Timmerman doing sound, did a fabulous job with both boom mic and lavs. We had a lot of volunteers like Kenneth Perkins. David came down to be my BCam op, which I will say, at first I was like, okay, I appreciate the help, but I don't think I really need a BCam op. So, but I'm not going to say no. I appreciate the help. But then once I started actually planning out the shots, I quickly realized how much I needed the extra help. So the slight little challenge to this shoot is that we were filming in a friend's house, and he told me, well, I can let you guys shoot for 1 day. Okay, in that 1 day, I had to shoot 6 pages of a 10-page script. And these 6 pages were not just 6 pages of dialogue. We had 2 outdoor dialogue scenes. We had the dining room dialogue scene. And then we had a fight scene that starts in the living room, goes back into the dining room, back into the living room, back into the dining room, and involves knives, guns, a prop bookshelf. Oh my gosh, what were we thinking? Yeah, when I tell you I literally had a nightmare the night before that shoot.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I cannot fail. Everybody's looking at me because, like, obviously, like, I had been shooting things since I was 18 professionally, but and I shot a short film, but like this was different. This was taking things to a whole new level. And I was like, I feel like at this point, like, I'm building so many connections in the community, like really like serious filmmakers, serious crew who are looking at me. And here I am trying to direct and DP this short film, and it's so ambitious for like somebody of my level. I'm like, I got to do this right. And I just remember showing up on set, and for the next 12 hours, I was on like hyper speed. Like, I had injured my foot the week before, and I remember I got home the evening after the shoot, and my foot was swollen. Like, I could barely walk the next day. I was running up and down those stairs. And then, like, oh my gosh, like, I was so blessed with cast and crew. Like, I know you can speak for yourself in this. I did not hear one peep out of anybody, like one complaint whatsoever. I mean, you got like pretty banged up. I mean, obviously it's a fight scene.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I gained massive respect for everybody on stunts during that shoot. Mm-hmm. For those of you who may be wondering, yeah, I got slammed around quite a bit. I got slammed, like full-on body slammed into the floor and into a bookshelf. Luckily, Ryan Avent was also our stunt coordinator, and he was my stunt partner during this. And it was a great experience.
Yeah.
I will say, I had more bruises on my body than I think I have my entire life. But the way that you ran the set, the way that everybody operated, like, it was...
Yeah.
It was a great experience across the board.
I feel like I try to hold myself to a high standard when I'm running a set. And for me, like, obviously stunts, like, you know, people are going to get banged up and bruised a bit. I've taken martial arts, so I understand, like, the toll. It's very athletic. But at the same time, like, as a director, I was like, we need crash pads. I had everybody rehearsing for, like, months before we were shooting, because I'm like, we need to know what we're doing. When we walk into this, I don't want books and guns and knives flying around. Like, what I mean, Ryan and I were like, we are holding gun safety talks, like, before every single shoot. Like, we were abiding by basically the Hollywood standards, because, like, obviously the Alec Baldwin thing, like, you know, really, for a lot of us, David and I, like, when we work with guns on set, it's like, this is a serious issue. We need to, like, clear these in front of everybody. We need to have safety protocols for, like, how we store it. So yeah, I definitely was trying to be as careful as I could, which was an added stress. And then on top of that, like, I knew we had to get so much done, but I was also trying to get everybody, like, at least hit wrap by the 12-hour mark. So I think we were just under. So from the time I arrived to the time that we shot our last take of the day was like 11 and a half hours. Because, oh my gosh, Joshua, I did not even know, but he had driven straight from Atlanta back to Augusta to shoot with us. And then as soon as we wrapped, he jumped in his car to drive back to Atlanta. I didn't even know that until we called wrap, and he's like, all right, I gotta head to Atlanta now. And I'm like, what? You've been wielding a boom mic for 11 hours, and now you're just gonna turn around and drive like 2.5 hours? Where do you get this energy? Because I don't know.
I love Josh.
Yeah.
I swear, there's no other way to. It feels like sound people are. It feels like they're kind of their own breed.
Oh, for sure.
I swear, Josh didn't know his time on Simon Says was great. The one thing I learned about him was he's fantastic. And then it came to us working on Kenneth Perkins' film Lux.
Yes.
And then I was like, Josh, how do you know so much about music and instruments as you do?
He plays the violin, he plays the guitar, like, that guy is so talented.
He knows how to fly fish.
Yes.
It's like...
And like whenever, oh my gosh, my favorite moment was, so for the viewers listening, was it July? Cody and I had the opportunity to act together.
Yeah, we did.
In a lovely short film called Lux, directed by Kenneth Perkins, who obviously helped us out and let us use his house for Simon Says. Love Kenny, brilliant filmmaker and writer. But yeah, we got the opportunity to act together, which was a lot of fun. The shoot itself was an all-nighter.
Yep.
So that was my first all-nighter. It was an experience, let me tell you. But I remember there was this one moment where Kenneth Perkins and his DP, Nick Laws, went off to set up outside a new shot. And we were all just like sat around waiting. And Joshua pulls out a pack of Uno cards. I'm like, this man is prepared. This is not his first rodeo. Oh gosh, that was so much fun. But yeah, Simon Says, man, that was something else. And at the time, obviously, like I said, like 2022, I'm like, I need productions, I need experience, I need to network. I was raring to go, but they always say, like, be careful what you wish for, because 2023 was the busiest year I have ever been through. Like, my head is still spinning over everything that happened to me in 2023. So here I am getting ready to shoot Left One Alive, which at the time I thought I was going to be a B-cam operator. Little did I know that David was like, oh yeah, no, I'm just going to sit back. I'm not going to shoot the movie myself. So you are now a cam operator. You're shooting the entire movie. But I did not know that at the time. But I guess was smart to shoot Simon Says as practice, because I definitely learned a lot about cinematography. And then literally freaking 2 weeks later, we go into a 20-day production for Left One Alive. And I mean, we're out in the middle of the woods, we're filming in houses, we're filming downtown Augusta. Oh my gosh. That was such a wild experience. And I think for me, it was a big moment because to challenge myself as a cinematographer, because like up until that point, I had been focusing on promoting myself as a freelance video editor. But like I said, like I have been in love with cameras since I was like 10 years old. I mean, I remember being 4 and I'm like, wait, you guys used to have a camera? Where's the camera? We need a camera. Like, I don't know. I've always, ever since I was a little kid, had a fascination with a camera. Like, I have to have a camera with me at all times. So as much as I tried to step away and find a niche, find one thing that I wanted to focus on, that experience on Left One Alive pulled me right back into my love for cameras. And I was like, I get such a thrill from being on set, planning out shots, working with the grips and the gaffer who are setting up the lighting. It's so exciting. Man. And as an actor, and Cody, like you worked with co-directing. I don't know if you've shot anything, worked behind the camera, but I know as an actor, the experience of being an actor versus being a crew member is very different. It's like, as an actor, you roll up to set and it's exhausting work, but there's a lot of sitting around.
Yeah.
And once you get put in your place, you have kind of this world of crew that are constantly circulating around you, rushing around. And as an actor, you're in your own bubble of like, I gotta remember my lines, I gotta get my costume, my makeup, I gotta, get in character, I gotta create a connection with my scene partners. And it's like two different worlds. And when you're acting, you don't really, you're purposely not focusing on what's going on around you because you're trying to stay in the moment.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because I know for me, in my situation, it is very much so not the commonplace thing when it comes to actors because growing up in the state of Maine, there's no industry up there. Yeah. So even if you're an actor, you're like 20 other things. Okay, so almost every production I have been a part of, if I was not an actor, I was part of crew or I was some combination thereof.
So you have the same experience that I've had too of working both sides.
Yeah, and for me, that's why it's like no matter how long the day is, it's always just making sure that people are okay, even if you were just an actor. Because look, do I love being an actor? Yes, but the one thing I have realized is I'm not 100% an actor. I will always be a crew head because for me, it's like actors are great. Crew people are really where it's at. Like crew people are always just them. I mean, yes, look, so much respect to everybody who works on crew because it's nuts. But the sound people, the grips, the directors, the ADs, like every single person who is on crew, I will say I have a very special place in my heart for hair and makeup people. Shout out to Nicolette Amani.
Yes.
Literally every time I'm in a hair and makeup chair, it feels like, I don't know why, but my entire life story comes out. But it's just, so, and that's another reason why I have so much respect for you is because you're also one of those people who, there's one specific thing that you are very, very confident in, but you have a general based knowledge about everything.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Like if you can get experience doing other things other than what your focus is, it actually benefits you in the long run. So I definitely encourage people to even work as a PA or a second AC and just get experience in different aspects. But definitely what I learned from Left One Alive, having had more acting experience and then obviously doing full service production, but that was like usually me kind of like one-man show filming stuff. But actually working in a full-size like film crew situation, realizing that the crew has to show up a good hour before, at least, before the talent gets there. And then after we call wrap and the talent leaves, we have to stay and break things down. And it's often 2 a.m. and it's freezing cold and there's bugs and it's raining and I just want to go home and go to sleep. So I have now a newfound mad respect for grips and crew and just the amount of work that they put in behind the scenes. And it's not as glamorous as the acting role where, there's a lot of red carpet experiences and that kind of fun glitz and glam, which acting is a lot harder than people think as well. But just working all sides, I have a newfound appreciation for how the entire machine of filmmaking works. It's like every gear and piece of the machine has to work perfectly. So every single role, even PA, second AC, like the smallest role in the department is so important. Because if you don't have somebody to go get coffee for everyone, it's like a domino effect.
Yeah, and there is the phrase when it comes to film sets is that you better be prepared because something is always going to go wrong on your film sets. But the thing is, when people are locked in, especially if you have such a profound trust for everybody you are working with, absolute miracles happen on set.
Yes.
Like I don't know if I've talked with you about number one, how long I've talked about Suitcases on here, but how long the Suitcases script was and what we shot both days. We got together and we shot 13 pages both days and were able to send everybody home before 9 p.m. both days.
Wow.
Because, I mean, once again, we had Gary Nipple, who we both know.
I love Gary.
Absolutely love him. Nicolette Almani was our hair and
Yes.
makeup, and Josh was our sound guy.
Yes,
And
dream team.
And with them, it was great, but all of our actors were also they were all on point, which I felt very, very lucky because of that group that we had from cast to crew, we were able to get through everything. And if we took out, I would say if we took out lunch and sort of the hour prep before each day, we probably were able to our second day was longer. It was about 12 hours because we were shooting a party. And let me tell you, if you guys are going to be shooting a party, just be careful. But our first day, we were able to wrap in about 5 hours, just like without lunch or the like if we don't include lunch or our hour prep time, because once again, everybody was just so prepared. And that's the other thing, which I'm sure you have experienced this, being on sets where everybody comes in with the best of intentions, but it's very clear that there are people who are not prepared for what they're getting into, whether it's they're very new to like acting or being on crew or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
It's very interesting. So working with David Axe, I've learned a lot about filmmaking because he has a goal. His goal that he started, 7 years ago, and that is to make a feature film every single year, which as filmmakers, we both know is extremely ambitious.
yeah,
But basically his philosophy is, he wants to make films, and so why not use that as a way to learn, actually get out there, make something, do it.
yeah,
And it all started, he's a writer, and he was trying to, get recognition for his scripts, get producers, get directors who wanted to create his scripts. But as every screenwriter knows, it's very hard to break into the industry.
yeah,
And often people will actually purchase the scripts for a period of time, but then they just don't get made.
yep,
And they lose the rights to those scripts. And so it's very frustrating for writers, often like very talented writers, to get recognition for their scripts and to actually get them made. And so he finally reached the point where it's like he wanted to make movies, and he's like, you know what, I'm just gonna make my own. And he jumped in there and has been making a movie every single year. And I was very inspired when we started working together. And basically what happened was, I thought I was just going to make one feature film last year. And oh my gosh, when you get two people like David and I together who are so ambitious and so driven and love filmmaking and just the art of storytelling so freaking much, that's kind of dangerous, because we didn't just make one film, Left One Alive, like we had intended to. We ended up making 3 feature projects last year, which are all in post-production right now. Oh my gosh. So basically, while it was right before we filmed Simon Says, he comes to me, he's like, okay, so he shot in a very awesome introspective drama / fantasy western, very, very genre-bending film that I love so much, called Acorn. It's starring some of my favorite people, Kaylin Sams Davis, Morgan Shaylee Renew. And is such a special movie to me because of the message that it contains. But they shot that in 2022. And so David was getting it ready for distribution. And he started talking to me about how he wanted to create something that would showcase the behind the scenes experience. What is it like when you have $50,000 to make a feature film, which is an incredibly small budget for a film? It sounds like a lot. It sounds like a lot of money, but that is an incredibly small budget for a feature film. But what happens when you only have $50,000 and you have a band of film-loving creatives who want to work with you and make something special, and you take this band into the backwoods of Georgia and try to shoot a super ambitious film project? Like, what happens? And oh my gosh, I mean, like as I have experienced going through several feature film experiences, just the things that happen on set, just the chaos and the unexpected, gear breaking, you lose locations last minute. It is the amount of stress you have to go through as a feature film director is just incredible. And he wanted to show the amount of work and effort and sweat and tears that they poured into these projects. And I was like, oh my gosh, going back to, I love documentary filmmaking so much. And I was like, I have been wanting to make a feature-length documentary for so long, but I've not had a topic, a subject that I felt that passionately about. And I was like, I'm a filmmaker. I know why I love making films. I know why I want to put in hours and hours of work and effort. And I mean, I have like $14,000 invested in camera gear. Like people, that's what people don't understand. Just to have a film kit, a camera kit, and lights, just enough to have a career and be able to like shoot stuff. Oh my gosh, the amount of money you have to invest into computers, laptops, software for editing. Oh my gosh. I was like, I want to make a documentary that shows what goes into making a feature film, what goes into getting together a group of people and actually creating art. And I know a lot of friends who just don't understand the process of filmmaking. And to me, it's so fascinating. So we talked about this project, and I was like, okay, I will direct this project. I am going to interview the cast and crew of Acorn, some of who we work with in Left One Alive. And so I was going to be working with them in the month of May. And I am going to interview them, and I am going to create a documentary. And I'm so excited. And then David goes, okay, yeah, but plot twist, the distributor is going to need the entire film completely edited by August 1st. And we were at the end of April. And if you know anything about filmmaking, people can spend a year or more on a documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, the month of May, we were filming Left One Alive. So that gave me 2 months afterwards to complete this project. And if you know anything about me, I'm like, I love a challenge. So while we were filming Left One Alive, I was also beginning to shoot interviews for the documentary that would come to be called Create or Die. And the title for me, so the movie Acorn is about a filmmaker who finds out she's been diagnosed with cancer, and she only has the time left to make one more movie. And so she decides to pour herself into a passion project of hers. And it's the adventures of what happens when obviously chaos ensues, as it is often happens on a film set. And it's basically the story of what happens and the story that she creates. And it's a very special film and an ode to filmmakers. And I wanted to capture that message in the documentary Create or Die, but the true life story behind Acorn. It was such a special experience to interview actors, crew people, David, the director, and the writer, and to talk to them about their passion, their drive for creating, for pursuing their dreams and their art. And it was so cool because it's like, as I was interviewing them, they were saying the exact same things that I feel back to me. The reasons that I pursue film, the reasons that I give up my free time and pour myself into what I do, those are the exact same reasons they do what they do. And it was so just surreal and awesome to just be sitting there talking to people about their inner drive and their love of creativity, why they can't let it go. And I think we've all been in a place as creatives where chasing our dreams is so difficult. I know for myself, I've been at a point where, I considered giving it up. And Create or Die is about why we don't. I think we've talked about this before, Cody.
maybe once or twice.
Yeah, about like why we just gotta do it. I
Yeah.
mean, people might not understand why do you have to do this thing? Why do you have to act? Why do you have to make movies? You know?
No. When you get to a point of, because let's call it what it is, it's obsessive. Like, we are obsessed with what we do because we
Yes.
love it so much.
In the best possible way.
And just like the regular, everyday, common folk, there is a bit of a separation there. And part of me blames that on society, because even though the arts are kind of cool now, it's not like 100% super supported. Like,
especially in the school systems too. Like I was lucky to be a part of a high school youth wing program, theater program, but there's a lot of schools that just don't get like as much funding for theater as they do for sports or science.
Yeah, no, there was a school that was adjacent to the high school that I went to. Basically, the town that I grew up in, there are three towns: Bath, Brunswick, and Topsom. I grew up in Bath. The school in Topsom, Maine, they were running low on funding, and they had both an arts program and a sports program. They completely cut the arts program so they could keep their sports program going. I believe their arts program is back, thank goodness, but that's what they elected to do. Because once again, sports as a whole is still looked at as more of a positive thing than pursuing the arts is. And nobody really understands it, much like creative and artists do, just how much of a sacrifice going into this is. We've talked about this a lot. The fact is, especially with people like you and David, people like myself, our goals are much bigger than like just trying to do this regularly, routinely as a hobby.
Right.
And trying to get into an industry like this, that means a good portion of the time you're going to be sacrificing weekends, you're sacrificing social time, sometimes you're going to be sacrificing holidays. And you're sacrificing a whole lot of money.
Sure.
It's like, that's just on what you were talking about before in terms of $14,000 worth of camera gear. That is just like baseline. And that's not talking about people who want to be actors as well as cinematographers, or people who want to be writers, or everything else. The amount that we have to sacrifice in terms of our finances so we can stay in a pursuit of this, it's a lot.
Yeah, because like I love acting, but like I found I've had to, sideline that a little bit in pursuit of editing and camera department work, because, I just don't have the money to also put into acting classes.
Yeah.
There's like so much I want to do and learn and classes I want to take, but, it's very much like I have to choose.
Yeah.
Because it costs so much. I mean, like people outside of the acting community maybe don't understand that like you can pay $400, $500 for a series of classes, and
more headshots.
Oh my gosh, headshots are so expensive. Like you can easily put $300, $400, $500 into your headshots, and then you get an agent and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna need you to go get some extra headshots, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and this is for anybody who has been listening to this podcast for any length of time. You know that this podcast is about mental health, and I'm going to be transitioning this into, we are still talking about the whole mental health of this whole thing, but it is going to be a bit of a different perspective, because I briefly touched on this with my friend Lexi. She's also a filmmaker, and she's a director and a writer and a producer, and we briefly touch on like the financial burden and the cost of actually running your own business as an artist and a creative. And I feel very fortunate to continue this conversation with you, because we've talked about this and we have a lot of the same opinions on this. Not only is it incredibly expensive, and not only do you have to do it year after year after year, but certainly when you decide to go into a more professional route, it can be sort of seen by a negative thing by a few people. I know when I'm going to be, for any of you listening, I'm actually transitioning out of Georgia, at least for a little bit, to go back home, partly for family. Part of it is because there's stuff going on in terms of planning and projects that I'm not going to discuss here. But when I go back there, I know there's going to be a lot of people who are very upset with me that I'm not going to be doing unpaid work anymore. It's like, and that's it's just a whole thing. And once again, Maine is a state that is not abundant with the industry. The closest thing we have adjacent is Massachusetts and Boston, and that is growing in terms of the industry. But Maine is still one of those, it's almost like it's a pay by favor sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's something I mentioned earlier, like when you're first getting started in the industry, to gain experience and to gain credits on your resume, IMDb credits. We've all been in that place where you do volunteer work.
Yeah.
You take whatever you can get and you use that. And I've done that. You use that to build your network. You build your connections.
And your resume.
And like I said earlier, like my connection with David was because I was doing an unpaid background gig and I met somebody who invited me to a screening. So I very much stress the importance of networking and getting out there and meeting people, even if it involves, spending a weekend on a film set for free.
Yeah.
To help out and get that experience. But the thing is, there is a point where you have to transition, and it's really hard because I think once you've done some free work for some people, like they can start to expect free work from you.
Yeah.
And also there's a very careful boundary. It's hard to navigate as you're building your career with friends. And I have found this as a freelancer. It's easy to want to do unpaid work for friends as a gift to help them out. And, I think it's very important within the industry that we all support each other. And like we discussed before, like filmmaking is very expensive.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people, like what Simon says, I did not have the money to pay every single person. I tried to do the best I could. But there is a point where you have to navigate. Like, I don't want to exploit people and expect them to work for free.
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that? And that's the difficult thing, especially too, because when you have friends that are outside of the film industry, they might not understand how much time, effort, classes, gear you have to pour into your business.
And building yourself up too.
Exactly. And so, you want to help people out, but you also have to learn to be tough, to be confident within yourself and be able to market yourself for what you're actually worth.
Yeah.
And I think every freelancer has gone through a position where somebody's tried to pressure them into working for less money than they actually feel like they are worth. And you gotta develop, a strength, an internal strength, and be able to, have contracts, be willing to take legal action if somebody's not going to pay you. I mean, it's hard, it's tough. You got to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Being a freelancer, being a creative, building a business on your own is difficult. And it's nice for actors and crew who are members of unions that can protect them. But even with that, we had the actors and writers strikes where, they had to stand up and defend their own rights. And that's tough. A lot of people were out of work. A lot of people, went through some tough times. The industry was shut down for a while, but you gotta defend yourself. And that's something I've had to learn in this industry that I'm still learning. You gotta value your time. You have to value your skills. And it's a hard line to navigate.
Yeah. And for me, I do think, once again, there are exceptions to every rule. For me, my rule when it comes to doing unpaid work, it's sort of like when I first got down here. Like, this area is completely new to me. The state of Georgia is completely new to me. And so when I got onto your film set, I was like, I really don't care that I'm not getting paid here. Mm-hmm. Because number one, I saw how passionate you were about trying to get this off of the ground. And the fact that this was your first film, I remember what that was like for me. But getting onto your set, I'm so glad that I took it, because there's so many, like I said, Joshua Z. Timmerman, had never met the guy before. we worked on 3 different film sets together, and then he came and worked on my set. It's like that sort of networking is very, very important. But also, like you were saying, at a certain point, and generally speaking, if you work on a particular facet and your skill and a particular skill set, there will be signs that you will find out what you're worth.
Yes.
And for me, it's like, I know that in the realms of like writing and directing and producing, I mean, maybe not so much. There have been signs now that what I am worth as an actor. And that took me a long time. And in terms of freelancing, it can be difficult because the biggest question I hear every freelancer is, I don't know how much I should be charging for my services. And then it's like you get a certain point and then someone's willing to pay you more for what you do. And then it's just stepping stones. It's a long process. And ultimately, I say it all the time, getting into the film industry or the entertainment industry in any facet to try to make it a career is becoming an entrepreneur. Like
For sure.
You are opening up your own business, and literally there could be an entire other episode to talk about this. But it's, for me, it's the one thing that I have thought over and I've mulled over. It's number one for me, one of the big reasons why, in terms of the struggle and in terms of mental health, it can be super, super difficult because number one, 90% of the time you are by yourself in this industry.
For sure.
And number two, it's like as you grow and as you know your worth and as things sort of come up, the people who detract from your life, although they may not have looked that way before, you just got to leave them behind. And and sometimes that's not a like leave them behind in like a personal sense where they'll still be like you can still be friends with those people, but in like a business or industry sense, it doesn't feel like there's a connection there anymore in terms of they don't understand what you're trying to do, whether it's monetarily or business wise or artistically. And that is a hard lesson I had to learn this past year.
Yeah. And I think like working within the indie industry, I've come to realize that people also can have different goals in their artistic endeavors. And I try to be incredibly supportive of everybody, no matter what their goals are. But that is going to inform what gigs I do take and which ones I don't, where some people might be doing it for fun as a hobby. Other people might be making films for certain reasons or for certain clientele. And then others might be more driven to pursue, say, the professional Atlanta market. And so I try to respect everybody's goals, but also a lot of us have differing goals within our artistic endeavors. Some are more community-based, and I love like supporting the Augusta community. But also I'm in a phase where I'm trying to build connections in Greenville, Columbia, Atlanta, and branch out as much as possible. Because like the thing that's kind of cool is like being in Augusta is it's like right in the center of multiple different hubs of film. So we have Atlanta is our big one. But then there's a lot of other like Charlotte, Greenville, down in Florida, a lot going on. And it's very cool because, like, you know, I am going to have to put in the mileage to get to different film sets, but I'm in a very centralized location, which is kind of cool. But yeah, like definitely like branching into a new market takes a lot of effort, especially when you're looking at, you know, just going to screenings and meetup groups in those other cities. I might have to put in an hour to 3 hours worth of driving just to get there. So that is a whole new thing I'm navigating right now is, you know, once you network within your community, which is where you need to start, is then branching out to the larger industry in your region. Yeah,
completely agreed. And for anybody who's listening, you want like a number one rule for how you can just be in people's minds and also just be able to have the chance to keep working. Just, first of all, don't let anybody step on you. But number two, just be a genuinely good person. Like, it's something that shouldn't be overstated. And I wish it's something that is mentioned in regards to an artistic industry. But for me, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like that rule seems really hard to come by. So yeah, just be a kind and genuinely good person and don't let people step on you. And you will be absolutely fine.
And I think this kind of like segues into kind of the other vein of your podcast, and that is talking about the mental health and emotional side of creating as an artist.
Oh yeah.
And knowing your self-worth and having confidence in who you are, I think is very important. You want to walk a fine line of like not having too much of an ego and not being willing to accept advice. But I think something I've really learned, I'm definitely like the people pleaser type, personality wise. And in the creative industry, like you're never going to please everyone, but there is a fine line of knowing what advice to take. Because I've been on film sets where, like one film set where somebody's telling me you didn't get enough wide shots. And then I'm on another film set where they're like, you didn't get enough close-ups. And I realize like everybody's got like their own concept of what's right and what's wrong. Like even when you look at Hollywood filmmakers, like David and I love to, on our film sets, really like push the boundaries of cinematography. So we've done some like really creative things like with one-ers and long takes. And, you know, obviously then you get the opinions of like, oh, well, you're not shooting standard coverage. But I mean, I've seen other directors like Spielberg, PTA, like have done some like absolutely incredible one-ers, long takes that are just absolutely gorgeous, usually like with a Steadicam or a gimbal. But shots like that are so exciting. But it shows you like within filmmaking, there are your basic rules that we all need to learn at the ground floor.
Yeah.
But once you get to a certain level, it's okay to break those rules. It's okay to get out there and start experimenting. But once you start experimenting with your filmmaking and storytelling, everybody's going to have an opinion. So it's that fine line of being like, learning which opinions to listen to and which ones to maybe respectfully disregard. And especially when you're just getting started in the industry, that can be hard to navigate, especially coming from a lot of like more senior people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been an interesting challenge for me. Yeah, I know I've been very grateful to have a lot of really good people in my life over the last year who have really mentored me and offered me really good, solid advice. And it is important as a creative to have mentor figures in your life who are more experienced than you, because like I said, when you start getting a lot of different opinions, it's good to have like a grounding force who's able to tell you, okay, well, these are, you know, the reactions you need to listen to, and these are the ones that you maybe don't. But man, art is so subjective.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to create artwork that people want to buy and watch and rewatch and tell their friends about, but you also want it to have authorship and be something unique and creative that reflects who you are, it's so complex. Navigating all of those little details, and then also having the confidence to like walk in a room and be like, hi, I'm Sarah, I'm a director, I'm, you know, a camera operator, a video editor, here's my work.
One on set, and action.
I make movies because I can't not. I make movies because if I didn't, what would I be? A fraction of myself.
Hey, I'm David Axe. I wrote and directed this thing you're about to see called Acorn. Mostly, it's about making a movie and the kinds of people who make movies, why they do it, and whether they care, whether they fail.
Acorn is about a young female filmmaker. She unfortunately gets a cancer diagnosis, and she decides that she's going to use those 6 months and make one last movie.
Because we are drunken fools, I just figured, why not write Die Standing Up too? How hard could it be? We'll just shoot them both. So we did. In 3 weeks, we made 2 movies.
Oh God.
Oh my God. I
lot of people have an idealized version of what making a movie is.
I thought I had access to a new Old West set.
By the time we got back to starting production, Old Warrenton had been shut down and a guy got shot. David was in a great dilemma.
It was insane. I come emerging out of our hair and makeup tent with a sweaty wad of penciled in script pages.
I just got so in my head. The horse blinders that I've had on just completely went away. I called my family that night and I was like, I've spent all this time doing this and I'm gonna go home and quit and just leave this all behind. That was a really hard thing for me to think about because it's all I've ever really wanted to do, perform and create.
Most micro-budget indie productions fail. They collapse, people quit. I will always finish my movies even if they're terrible.
Nobody goes into independent filmmaking trying to be rich.
When you create something for the sheer joy of creating, that's art.
It makes life worth living having a creative outlet.
I am absurdly, ludicrously dedicated to the bad idea of starting nowhere and making a good movie.